Hi guys. Thank you for having me here. I really love coming and talking to this class because I feel like when I was here, nobody came from industry to talk, and I was kind of shocked, and there were a few things that nobody told me when I went to work that I feel like would have been useful to know when I was a student that could have helped me a little bit. So I love to come back and talk about it. I've tried to modify this a little bit because I know that this class is streamed, and it's like, you have people, it's like an online course also, and maybe they're not students, and there's some things that are less relevant to them, so hopefully I'll say something useful to them also. So like you said, I graduated in 2010. I took this class. Immediately afterwards, I got a job with Pivotal Labs. I know that you guys have talked about it quite a bit, but what we do there generally is a lot of pairing. They build Pivotal Tracker, but it's also a consulting firm, and they do a lot of consulting, especially for really small startups. So my first, I would say 6 to 8 months there, it was kind of me ramping up. We built this, I would say, small project in this class, but I don't feel like I got a huge grasp on Rails or how you would do that in a production system until I went to Pivotal, and the pairing experience was really useful for me. Did you guys do pairing in this class?
Yeah.
How much pairing did you do?
Just a couple of weeks, but some projects, some people in some projects like it and they do it, but probably not most people.
Mm-hmm. I think that was my experience when I did pairing I think I paired with someone on databases, 186 course, and I was like, this is weird. Somebody's watching me code over my shoulder. Did you guys like it when you did pairing? Some of you? I feel like pairing is really useful when you are at a certain level. When you are both at the same level, you can learn things together, and that's really awesome. You can kind of stumble together and discover solutions, and then you both know. But it's even more useful when you're, when I was at Pivotal, when you have someone that's really experienced and someone that's down here. And if you're pairing together, the way you can level up is so quick. This person's just here's this trick and this trick and this trick, and let me teach you this. And you can learn as fast as you can retain the information that they're practically downloading into your brain. So I feel like Pivotal and pairing as my first job, for that first 6 to 8 months, was the best experience I could have had. That brought me from, really low down to pretty experienced very quickly. After the first 6 to 8 month period where they kind of ramped me up, then I got to see the other side of it actually. So I got to be kind of the teacher, because Pivotal, as the consulting, what they want to do is teach this pairing, this TDD style to startups, to people that are coming in, so that they can use that process and take it away with them. And so I got to be the teacher that time and be someone that's trying to level the other people up. And I can tell you that is really valuable too, because you don't know how much you don't know about something until you try to explain it to someone. And then you really learn the bits in between that you thought you knew, but you learn it really solidly well when you have to explain. So that was pretty awesome. At Pivotal, it was fun doing consulting. I would actually recommend you guys try consulting at some point in your career. It's really valuable because you get to do a lot of different projects over a period of time. I would say I was at Pivotal for maybe a year and a half, and during that time I probably did about 7 or 8 different projects. So I got to do this website, I did this mobile game, I did some more back-endy features, I did this project that was totally backbone JavaScript, no Ruby or Rails at all. And so I got to have this plethora of experiences and apply the things that I learned from one project to another, more so than I think I would have if I had just gone and worked on one single project and saw this one tiny slice. So that was really valuable. But at a point, I think that I got tired of consulting and working on other people's projects. They didn't feel like they were my own. And so I wanted to go and work on something that I felt like I really like this and I'm really passionate about it, and I want to help build this one product and make it better. And so that's when I left Pivotal and I went to ModCloth. If you haven't heard of it, it's this fashion retail website, basically. They're trying to democratize fashion and make people vote for things that they'd want to buy, so that they see things that they want, instead of dictating this is what the hot thing is this season. You tell us what you want and we'll give that to you. I thought that was pretty cool. I worked there for a little while. And then eventually, through some of my dealings outside of work, I got to meet people at GitHub. And I thought that they were really awesome, they were really smart, and they were building something super cool that I used every single day. And so when the opportunity came up to start working there, I jumped at that opportunity. So let's see. I would say, given that the first few jobs that you have are super important, they can help you kind of have this trajectory and show you where you're going in your career. I think without Pivotal, I can't even imagine what place I would be in. That kind of boosted me up quite a bit, and it helped me to meet a lot of different people. When I was consulting, there were a lot of people from the Ruby community that I met. I started going to conferences, which nobody told me about when I was a student, but they became really valuable like a year in. Once I had learned things, I would go to conferences and meet these people. And this is the way that I found other jobs. This is how I found the job at ModCloth. This is how I found the job at GitHub. Like, it wasn't through recruiters. It wasn't through job boards or anything like that. It was actually through just going out and talking to people and meeting people. And when they had a job available, they said, hey, I met this person here. We should just ping them and see if they're interested, see if they want to come work with us. So that's pretty valuable information. What is the breakdown of like seniors versus
Juniors and seniors now.
Juniors, seniors mostly? Have most of you done internships at all? Like one internship, two? That's awesome. Is it mostly, have you done mostly big companies? Have any of you done internships at startups?
I guess it'd be all at big companies.
All at big companies? I would encourage you, if you're maybe a junior and you have time to do another internship, to check out a small company too and kind of compare and contrast. I think there's a huge difference between working at a big company versus working at a small company. And one might be a fit for you, whereas the other one might be a fit for someone else. And I think if you don't have a chance to see both of those things, you might go out there and start working there and think this is the only way to do it, whereas a smaller company might fit you better, or vice versa. I got a chance to do an internship at Motorola doing some of their Android stuff, and it was a really big company, and I realized that I didn't like big companies. And so when I was at Pivotal, it was really small, and I liked that, and it got bigger, and I said, okay, I think I need to leave. It's not where I want it to be. Yeah.
So I've done a couple internships. Okay, so I've done like 3 different internships at NASA, and I did one internship at Qualcomm, and I've always sort of been a little bit freaked out about the idea of working at a startup because there's, I guess, this expectation that I think exists that I should walk in and know how to do a million different things, and like anything could fall on my desk at any moment. Is that kind of how it is?
I would say if you're at a really early stage startup, you will have anything fall onto your desk, but there isn't an expectation from them that you know how to do it already. I think the expectation is more you'll figure it out. You learn to become a jack of all trades. You are all smart students who can pick up things, and like you know how to Google, you know how to do research, you know how to learn, and so that's what you would be doing in that situation. I think there'll be things you'll be comfortable with, things that you never thought you would do that you might actually end up liking.
Yeah, I would say in the people I've talked to at startups, one of the things they like about it afterwards is everything they had to learn. So if you remember, somebody last week wisely talked about slope versus intercept, right? Is if you can learn fast, that's the more important thing than the experience. And and I think at startups they realize they've only got 6 people, and you got to do it everything. So you got to learn how to do stuff. But people really, I think that was a great thing for them to have done. At least do it one time. I don't know more than that. What about work-life balance in startups?
I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. There are different size startups. If you are like the first employee, they may expect you to work a lot more than you think you should work or you really want to work. I wouldn't do that unless you're really passionate about it. Honestly, I wouldn't do that for anybody else's company. I would do it for my own, and that's it. I'm not willing to put in that amount of work for someone else unless I'm super passionate about the idea. Otherwise, there are, you think of startup and you think of these really tiny things, but startup is up to a certain size. You can still be kind of a small startup-y company. Like GitHub right now is 200 people. People still call us a startup, but we are not I'm not doing everything right now. In fact, I'm doing less than I was at ModCloth and at Pivotal because we're so large that I've specialized in a smaller area, and I try not to, and I still go out and do other stuff, but this one area needs my focus and attention, and it ends up taking up all my time. But work-life balance is very important. One thing that I told the class, I think the last time I was here, was you get used to, at Berkeley, having this really intense schedule. So you have a semester, and you pack as many classes into it, and you study really hard, and at the end of the semester you're probably burnt out. But that's okay because you did what you needed to do to get that grade, and you've got a little bit of break in between, and you get into this cadence. And I think some people who come out into work life want to apply that also. And you don't have semester breaks in work, and it's not only 4 years long. Like it just keeps going. And so if you do that, you're going to burn out so quickly. And burnout is a very real thing, and I see it a lot in people. I have friends who have gone out and worked at startups right after school, and they go really, really hard, and then they're just like, I can't do this anymore, and they have to walk away. They'll take a couple months off. Like even in between ModCloth and GitHub, I took a month off, and I backpacked around Europe because I was like, I am so burnt out right now. I was doing too much. I was trying to do too much, and I think it's a good lesson. So something to keep in mind. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I guess when I got my first job, I thought it would be my job forever. I was like, yes, I got this offer. It's going to be awesome, and I didn't think about moving on or leaving or anything like that. That thought never crossed my mind. And so when it got to the point where I was realizing that it wasn't a fit for me anymore, it was actually hard for me to make that decision to leave and to think about doing the interview process again, because the interview process, as someone who has a little bit of experience, is very different from a new grad. I find that as a new grad, people wanted to know my GPA, and they wanted to give me like brain teasers and puzzles because they assumed that I couldn't really code for real, and so they had to have some other way to gauge, am I going to be a fit or not? I would say once you get beyond that, once you have a little bit of experience, the interview process totally changes. There were interviews where they still do like whiteboards and try to do brain teasers, but if I were to go to one of those right now, I would honestly just walk out because I don't think that's a good way to gauge whether somebody's going to be actually useful. I think that if you go to an interview and they put you in front of a computer and you sit down and you code together, that is awesome. And you should want to work there because those people know what they're doing. The best way to gauge how someone works and collaborates is to sit down and work and collaborate with them. So if somebody does that for you, that's awesome because you get to, in that situation, gauge what it would be like to work with those people. I think that you may be sitting there saying, I really want to work at Google, and that's my ultimate goal. But Google itself is not the point, the offer from them, the title, the job that you think you're going to get. That's not important. It's actually more important the people that you're working with, what you're working on, the team. If you're working in a place where you're doing a lot of collaboration, it's really important to make sure that the people that you're working with are smart, they communicate well, you're able to go back and forth and really build something well, and as opposed to maybe you just going off in a corner and writing your own thing and nobody helping you. If you're in that situation, I think you're going to struggle a lot, and you will have a lot better time if you're able to collaborate with someone. Let's see, what else? I guess another point with interviews is just always remember that when you're being interviewed, you are also interviewing the company. Like I said before, I thought like, I get this offer and I'm gonna have this job and this is gonna be my title and that's the ultimate end. And I didn't think at that point a lot about how the company would fit for me. And so when I was doing the interviews after I left Pivotal and when I was planning to leave ModCloth and go to GitHub, I was really focusing on how will this company work for me? And I think it's hard to know how it will work for you before you've had a little bit of experience, but once you have that, I think you need to take advantage of the interview situation and spend time really talking to these people and asking them questions like, what is it like day to day to work with you? What am I going to be doing? Is there somebody there that can almost be your mentor? I think that's really important, especially in your first job, actually. If you have someone that can just kind of sit beside you and guide you, you look up to them, they're very smart. That's what you want in your first job and in any job after that. The best jobs that I have are at places where I'm pretty sure I'm the dumbest person there, and that's awesome because that means I will get to learn from tons of smart people and just like soak up all their knowledge. Like, give me your knowledge. So yeah, that's important. Let's see. I'd like to talk a little bit about what I do day to day. I think the things that you learned here, like the technologies that you did, you learned like TDD stuff, RSpec, right? Cucumber, those sort of things I use.
Cucumber, BDD, Cucumber, RSpec, deploying Heroku. What they do differently now is they have external customers that they have to satisfy. So they meet with them 4 times, 4 iterations. So yeah.
That's really awesome. That was a little different than how it was when I took the class, but I think that's getting closer to kind of a real world experience. When I was at Pivotal, that's exactly what happened. We had a product manager who was somebody from the client. We would meet once a week and kind of plan out what we were going to do for that week. We would pair. We'd be using Tracker. We'd be doing the TDD stuff, a lot of RSpec, Cucumber, Capybara, that sort of thing. We did there were builds, we did continuous integration. I don't know if you do any of that. Just like having your tests run and seeing whether they're green and kind of stop all development. If it's not green, fix it right away. Like, don't let things stay broken. I remember being a student and like compiling C code and just seeing like tons of warnings and terrible things. And in a production environment, you probably shouldn't have that. You should have everything clean and green and ready to go. One cool thing that I guess you probably wouldn't do as students, but that we do at GitHub is actually continuous deployment. So we have our suite of tests at GitHub. As soon as we push to a branch or push to master, it kicks off a job to run the tests. And as soon as those tests are green, it pushes it straight out. It deploys it to production immediately. And so at GitHub, we're deploying maybe like 100 times or more a day. Just people are deploying all the time.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. Not every company works that way, but if you can get it set up to work that way, it's really cool. If I had prepared and thought of this, I could have like pushed something up and deployed it to production right now and had you guys see it. But it is the middle of the day and everybody's probably working on important stuff, so maybe I wouldn't have been able to get in there.
Well, they do a pull request at GitHub, is that right?
We do. We use pull requests. We do. There isn't a whole lot of pairing at GitHub. Some people still really like pairing, and they'll do it all the time. Sometimes I'll just drop in and pair with people, and then we'll go away. But we do use the pull requests model, which do you use it at all?
Why don't you say what it is?
Well, so it is you create a branch off of master. You put whatever changes you're going to on this branch, and then you go to GitHub. When you push this branch, you can submit a pull request, which is, I want to take all the changes from my branch and merge them into master. And you'll usually write up a description about it. We use a lot of @mentions on GitHub, so you can mention people by username. Within organizations, you can have teams. So what we'll do is, like, I'm on the platform and systems team. So if I'm doing something system specific, I'll say, here's my pull request. Let me describe what I've done and why I've done it, what bug I'm fixing or what feature I'm adding. And then at the bottom, I'll CC the team that I'm on and say, OK, come take a look at this. Make sure it looks OK. Review my code. Give me comments. Tear it all down if you think it's terrible, whatever. And then after a few people say, like, oh, this looks good, or maybe change this and then merge it, then there's the big merge button at the bottom. You say merge, and it'll merge it right into master.
But everybody's supposed to take a look. Everybody you mentioned is supposed to take a look at the code, right, before you are able to push it, right?
In general, there's nothing that we do to restrict that right now. So if I'm doing a really important fix and there's no time for somebody else to do it, or, I mean, GitHub is really asynchronous. I guess I didn't explain this, but out of 200 people, probably like 70 work in San Francisco. Everybody else works all around the world. And so the people on my team, I think me and one other person are the only ones in San Francisco. Everybody else, there's somebody in Denver, somebody in Louisiana, people just all over the country.
How big is your team?
My team is about 5 people. So because we're asynchronous like that and people at GitHub, we work whenever we want to work, which sometimes I come into the office at 3 p.m. and leave at midnight because that's just what works for me. But in that case, I might not be able to review a change that somebody who, they were being productive at 11 a.m., they wanted to work then. I didn't have time to get back to them, so they might just decide to merge it. If it's more dangerous code, people will probably wait. Yeah.
If there's other questions.
Yes, please, interrupt me.
Well, there's questions in the back.
Yes.
Let me get the question. Maybe I should do some.
So if in GitHub, basically anyone can work whenever they want, isn't there any slacker, any people who work less than the others because there's no control among them, or how does that work?
I mean, occasionally that happens, but in general, we try to hire people that are really self-motivated and really passionate about the thing that they're going to be working on. And we say, if you're not passionate about the thing that you're working on, go find something that you are passionate about and go work on that. We do not have team allocations. We don't say, we hire you, you must work on this. If you get in and you say, I don't really like this thing over here is cool, they need help, you can go work on that. Eventually, if somebody is not doing work and really slacking, we'll be like, hey, what's up? And if they still don't do it, we'll be like, hey, you're fired. But hopefully we don't have to do that.
So then, as long as you say hey, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had a question about the continuous integration and I guess also the asynchronous kind of work style. So if you're merging, or if you're like pushing and deploying at the same time, like what happens if you're trying to like collaborate with someone who needs the code that you push to fix something else, and like you don't want to push it to production if it's not, like, if you and the other person haven't like totally finished what you guys are working on together. So how do you solve that like asynchronous collaboration without like pushing like half finished code to production?
So we use branching a lot. I don't know if you guys use branching very much with Git. So we can put things onto a branch and kind of collaborate on that branch. And once we feel it's finished, merge it into master and deploy it. Is that what your question was?
Only master. Yeah. I guess only master gets pushed to production is like that.
Oh yeah, when you do the continuous deployment, only master gets automatically pushed. The way we have it set up, we can branch deploy. So I can say, my special branch, I can push that out to production and have that out instead of master.
Other questions?
So it seems like GitHub is kind of known for this sort of, like largely asynchronous, very remote distributed development system. My question is there sort of this issue where, like, if you're in the SF office, you're kind of like on the in crowd, right? Like maybe you accelerate faster or you learn more, or do you find that people sort of, lone developers out in like Scandinavia can still accelerate as fast as people in the SF office?
I think that sometimes we do run into the situation where the SF office is a little bit special and you're able to do some things face-to-face, which are harder to do asynchronously. But we've tried really hard to solve this because we don't want that to ever be an issue, and we don't want the people who are remote to feel isolated. So one of the things we do is about twice a year, we will fly the entire company into San Francisco and have almost like this internal conference. And you'll get to see these people face to face who maybe you just interacted and you only saw their avatar. And so that helps. It's weird, right? That sounds weird, but it totally happens. And you're like, oh, you're that person with the funny hats. It's nice to actually meet you. And you get to, it's a fun time because you actually get to bounce ideas off of each other and go back and forth and do the sort of things that don't happen asynchronously. But we have other technology that we try to keep the day-to-day stuff. We really try to keep it online. So we have a chat room. We're in Campfire all the time, and each team or each little area kind of has their own chat room. So even if you're talking to someone in person, like if the other team member that I have for my team, we're chatting in San Francisco, we'll try to drop what we've talked about in the chat room or into a pull request. We always want it to be something that people can get to later, something that's searchable. We try not to do anything over email. So like pull requests replace email for us, and Campfire chat logs are searchable like back through all of history. And so if we're conscious about that, then the people who are not in San Francisco, they don't feel that much pain. And when they do feel pain, we want to kind of bring them into the office and still have that time to do the face-to-face stuff, because I don't think you can totally remove that. I think there's some really important like human aspects about just like talking to someone and bouncing ideas off of each other and almost even having empathy for someone. You can look at somebody's code and be like, oh, that's terrible. But if they were sitting right beside you, you wouldn't say, oh, that's terrible. You might be more constructive, you might be kinder, and so I think that's pretty important.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I suppose.
Maybe.
So, I've always had this dream that I could only have to own 3 things in life, right? A laptop, a solar panel, and a satellite dish. Is that dream alive?
Ooh. You might need some clothing, first of all.
What?
You might need some clothing, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on where you're living.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe not. It might be hard to own a satellite dish, but there's companies out there that provide that, so maybe you can save that third item for something else.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like, so you mentioned there are these guys in like Louisiana, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Is the dude in Louisiana just like coding on his couch and like just?
Oh yeah, he's got a home office set up, or he sits on his couch, like has his baby sitting beside
And
him all
that's
day.
totally cool. You guys are completely okay with that. You
Oh
encourage
yeah,
it.
we encourage it, absolutely. I think that if you let people work where they feel the most comfortable, they're going to be more productive.
Okay. Huh.
So if you wanted to like travel for a couple weeks, if you were gonna just bring your laptop with you and have a internet connection, would that be cool with?
Yep, a lot of people do
Fantastic.
that.
And are you accepting applications?
I think right now we are not hiring a whole lot of people, and in general, GitHub has actually been pretty bad at hiring new college grads, just because with this asynchronous thing, it's hard to get you guys up to speed really fast, and it would be easy for you to just kind of flounder off in the corner. I think I've been talking with some people and trying to make that better, and maybe we can start bringing in a few new grads and do like this intense pairing thing to bring people up to speed or something, but right now, probably not, unfortunately.
Follow up?
Yeah.
Will you be hiring in about a year?
Probably. Come talk to me then.
But I would say increasingly, GitHub is not the only company that operates that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess did Pivotal Labs, was everybody there, or were they distributed too?
Pivotal Labs had different offices around the country, but in general, I don't think they allowed that much
Because it was
distribution.
everybody was expected to pair a program. right?
Exactly. There were a couple people that used to live in San Francisco and for various reasons had to move elsewhere, and so they would do this remote pairing thing, which I have done with clients who had to be remote for a while, and it is extremely painful. The lag of saying something and seeing someone type, it's very exhausting, and so it's probably not reasonable to
So
try to
it's
sustain that.
difficult to pair program and be a wanderer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think many companies, modern companies today, several employees, often they'll have been at the mothership, and then for whatever reasons, either they want to or they have to move to another part of the country, and people will accommodate them. So, and then people will live in Vermont and work there. It's
Yeah,
pretty.
I think it's the future of work. I really hope that more companies move towards that, and hopefully the things that GitHub does, we can tell people about them, and so they can do that for their other companies. Because I've talked to people who have worked remotely, and they're like, I'm just totally disconnected from the rest of the company, and that's not a good feeling.
Hi, you mentioned that an important question that we ask companies that we want to work with is, can they provide a mentor? So is that still available at GitHub? Like, do you guys still have mentors for new grads, or I'm not sure if you have internships either?
You just said they don't hire very many new grads.
But when you do have new employees, what happens?
We do, in fact, we're very explicit about mentorship. So when you are hired at GitHub, we actually have what we call a buddy for you. And this person, for the first couple of weeks, they are like intensely working with you. They'll usually be on your team. They will pair with you. They'll teach you, like introduce you not only to the project, but to GitHub as a company, because we're a very weird company and we have to kind of have an introduction process. And then over the next 6 months or so, this person is going to be checking in and making sure you're doing better. And maybe that's not necessarily a mentor per se. Like if someone, like I was a buddy to someone recently who's starting a company who's been doing Ruby for a very long time and is far beyond my level. So me being a mentor to this person is ridiculous. But I was a buddy to them, which was, let me introduce you to the project and to the code and to GitHub itself and kind of teach you what it's like to work here. But I'm going to work with you and you're probably going to teach me a lot because you're very, very knowledgeable.
All right. Well, one of the questions I was going to ask, and I didn't want to forget, is that for new college hires, it was kind of what's the most important thing in the resume? And so it's like a multiple choice question. Is it your alma mater? Is it your grade point average? Is it your technical grade point average? Is it the classes you took? Is it your GitHub repository? Work experience? Well, what's the things that the people who do hire new college grads, what do they look for today?
I think, let's see, if you have stuff on your GitHub profile that's public, I would definitely include a link to that so people can see actual code samples. I think that's super important. I think if someone can see your code, that's way more important than your resume because they can see how you actually think through things, how you build things, do you write clean
Increasingly,
code?
people it's like having a portfolio, right? They look at your code as part of the application process.
Absolutely. If you can also describe like projects that you've done, either class projects or if you have personal projects, that looks awesome to people, although I understand you may not have time to do that.
And participating in open source projects?
Definitely, that's a big plus. I mean, especially for GitHub, we hire a lot of people that are very involved in open source and they continue to maintain those open source projects as they work.
Okay, so you didn't mention alma mater or grade point average or?
Nope. I think it's tricky. I think that can tell you some things, and it can also tell you nothing. If you've gone to this particular school, then you're probably smart, but maybe you're really good at theory, and you can't code worth a dime. And UC Berkeley does not tell me that. Your GPA may tell me that you're good at tests and you're good at picking good project partners, but it still doesn't tell me that you'll be good to work with. So these are interesting things, and they'll probably attract certain sorts of companies that think that that's exactly that's the formula that will tell them what a good hire is going to be. But in my experience, not really.
Okay, good. That was the answer I was expecting you to say. Okay, here's another question.
Yeah, so previously you talked about sort of trying to figure out if a company is a good fit for you, and I think that's smart, but I guess my next question on that is, do you have any sort of examples, tips, thoughts on how to actually go about that? Any methods?
Yeah, sure. I would say when you're interviewing with these people, if you're able to talk to the people that you will be working with the most, I think that's the best way to figure out fit. Like, how do they communicate with you? Communication is actually really important. If you're working at a place where you're collaborating, which I hope you do because I think that's the best way to build software, you need to see how you collaborate with these people. When you're in the interview process, are they standing there, like standing back, quizzing you and just like waiting for you, or are they talking with you? Are you working through this problem together? That will give you a good sense of what will it be like to work through real problems with these people when I'm actually working here. And just kind of asking questions like, what is this company like? Give me a day in the life of you. I think you'll get a good idea of what it's like to work at that company, what the team dynamic is, and where you would fit in with that. Also, if you're at a place where you have managers, try to get an idea of what the organizational structure is. At GitHub, we have no managers, which I love. It's the most amazing thing ever. I've been to other places where there are managers, and sometimes the management can just get too heavy, and you find yourself in meetings and doing these things that are like, they seemed pointless to me, and all I wanted to do was just code. And so now what I do all day is just code, and that makes me happy. So if I were to interview somewhere and they would be like, well, we're going to meet with you once a week to do this, and you're going to have to talk to this person, I might be like, this isn't a good fit for me.
I have to follow up. There's no managers at GitHub?
No managers, really. People...
Is it so it's all self-organizing?
It's all self-organizing. Leaders kind of bubble up project-based. So someone will say, hey, I really want to work on this, and this is what I want to build, and so who wants to work with me? And if enough people think it's cool, they'll kind of come underneath this person and start working, and the person we do, what we call it is like the primarily responsible person, the perp, basically, and you will perp a project like you are the leader, and you're responsible for the development and trying to get people to come work with you and convincing them that it's a good idea, and then seeing it through to the end and supporting it after it's released, those sort of things.
Do you follow the Scrum model with stand-up meetings and stuff like that?
No, we do none of that.
But GitHub did that, right?
What's that?
Pivotal Labs did this.
Pivotal Labs did that, yeah. And that's really good for a structured environment, especially where you're building something where you don't know the rules that you want, or you're not a user of the product. Like, working at GitHub is unique because I'm a programmer and I use GitHub. And so I know exactly what I want. And so I can say, I want this feature, and then I can go build it. Whereas if I'm building something for an insurance company, like, I'm not an insurance adjuster. I don't know what you need. So I need someone to gather that feedback from people. I need someone to kind of manage the project and then tell me what to do. And so I can kind of pick those things off the queue. It's a little bit different style of working.
So you're like a lot of student projects in other classes, you're the customer and the developer.
Exactly.
So you know what the customer wants.
Exactly.
Anything you do, the customer loves or something.
Pretty much. Well, you know what? Whenever we release new features, Twitter sometimes blows up with like angry people. Oh my God, you changed this. So they don't always love it, but we try.
All right. Other questions? Here.
I was wondering, like, when you decide to leave from a company, can you kind of explain like what the goodbye speech to them is? Kind of like.
Oh.
I hated working here. I never want to see you again. Burn all the bridges.
Yeah, hopefully, I would try not to burn bridges. I don't think I've burned any bridges at the places I've left. I usually try to send out an email, or if the people that I'm working really closely with, I try to, in person, say, hey, I'm going to be leaving, I'm going to be going to do this, and then you're going to see an email soon. I usually send out an email to the whole company, just letting people know that I'll go. And you just have to be nice and be genuine. I wouldn't ever, like, don't get angry, don't rant, don't burn bridges. It's not worth it. Like, the community that you'll be working in is very small. You're going to see these people over and over again. Don't burn bridges.
Sort of in a similar vein, could you speak to the etiquette of handling multiple offers and obviously declining all but one of them, and the time frame in which you should do that and some of that kind of stuff?
That's a really good question. It's difficult sometimes. A lot of companies, if you're interviewing and they like you and they want to give you an offer, a lot of companies will actually pressure you to accept the offer right away. They want to be like, here's the offer, take it, don't look at anybody else, because they don't want you to have options. They want you to choose them, obviously. It's in their best interest. And so I think that there's this careful negotiation where you have to push back a bit and say, I'm actually interviewing at these other places. I'm really interested in you. You don't want to be dismissive or like, yeah, you guys are okay, but I'm kind of talking to these other guys and I really like them. Like, you have to be kind of like, I want to be respectful, be like, I want to, see through all of my options. There's a lot of times where you're kind of in the middle of one interview process and at the end of another, and you want to talk to everyone you want to talk to and get to the end and get the offers that you think you want, and then decide from there. So don't let anybody push you. There are plenty of jobs out there for Berkeley grads or for programmers in general. And so if anybody's pressuring you, they're probably not a good fit. There's another sign.
Yeah, I would say in my life experience, sometimes people would pressure you with a short notice. That's an indication of lack of self-confidence, is that they think, well, we can get this person to say yes now, but if we get any competition, that they can't possibly say yes. So
yeah, that's a bad sign.
And you kind of probably don't want to say, that it's just the money, right? It's probably the money, the stock options. You want it to be, boy, I really am interested in this place. But I think saying that I've already applied at these other places, and I feel like I have to go through the process, wouldn't make people mad at you, I think.
Yeah, I think people understand that and they're respectful of it, but they still, out of self-interest, they're going to be like,
They'll
why
try.
would you? Yeah, they'll try.
All right. Did you had? I think I kind of interrupted your flow.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just had notes here. I don't have a talk,
All right.
really.
But we can keep going on the notes unless
Sure.
people have are there more questions here?
I think I have one other thing that I kind of want to talk about that was, I guess, let's see. Communication is actually super important. And I feel like you get a little bit of that in college. You learn to collaborate with your partners, but doing like pair programming and then doing things through pull requests have really made me realize how important your words are. You know, when you are talking and explaining to something to someone when you're pairing with them, you can either say it once well, or you could say it 3 times over and over and over again, and get kind of frustrated trying to explain this to them. And it's the same thing with pull requests, emails, whatever communication you're having with your team. If you learn to communicate really well and really effectively, then you only have to say it once. And a secret about this is that your code is just as much of communication as your emails, what you say face-to-face, your pull requests. Your code is communicating to other developers. And so I always try to make my code as clean as possible and try to be as clear as I possibly can. Of course, sometimes it's clear to me and maybe not to other people. But I think that's something that you learn to improve on. When I took this class, one of the recommended books was Clean Code. I don't know if that's the case anymore, but I would recommend that book.
I think it's on the recommended list, but it's not required.
I would recommend that book. And if you're doing Ruby, Sandy Metz wrote Practical Object-Oriented Design in Ruby, otherwise known as Pooter. And it's it's a fun one to say, but it's a really good book, and it teaches you how to think about things in a really clean way and look at your code and kind of analyze it and say, okay, this is a little messy. How can I make this clearer? And I think that has gotten me really far in my career. That's helped me to build things better than I thought I could. I come up with this messy idea and I just throw it down, and then I'm like, okay, let me use my principles that I know to kind of clean this up, and it ends up kind of turning into something that maybe I wouldn't have started out designing that way, but it was better in the end.
Let me ask some questions. So we use Code Climate and other things to look for design smells and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Do you use any of that stuff?
Code Climate is excellent. I used that while I was at ModCloth. We would run all of our builds through that and kind of get this grade back. And it's really good way to get these code smells, especially when you are just starting out and you don't know the best patterns to use for Ruby or Rails. It's really effective. I think once you get to a certain point and you need to optimize things or you need to write them in ways that run faster as opposed to are cleaner and better looking, Code Climate's going to go backwards for you because they're going to tell you, this is terrible code, you shouldn't have written that. And you're like, no, I really need to. But there's a point
as long as you talk back to it, it's okay.
Yeah, there's a point beyond which you know that that's going to come out as an F in Code Climate. And once you can do the Code Climate in your head, you don't need it anymore, I think.
And let's see, what was my other question? Code Climate. Oh, well, I forget. What about, but communication was code, that's part of it.
Yeah.
So writing and speaking, is it things you'd recommend, or what did you do to get better or something?
I mean, when I was at Pivotal, pairing for 8 hours a day, every single day, forced my communication to level up like quite a bit. That was a really good investment, I think. It was exhausting too, but it was worth it. I think that helped me with my verbal communication. Now that I've moved over to doing things at GitHub in the pull request model, I actually feel like I'm relearning that in written form because I think I can express things fairly well face-to-face. I got used to communicating that style for more than 2 years, and now translating that to written communication has been a bit of a challenge, but I think I'm getting that.
Well, any advice for these guys?
Practice, practice, practice.
Maybe be a TA for 169 or something?
Yeah, maybe.
What's your experience, joining like one of the companies that you've worked with, and then taking something on after you've gotten your feet wet and everything, and taking it and becoming yours, and you're the expert in that particular thing? Like, do you have any advice on that?
Like how to find that thing to take on?
Just how I guess maybe how to find it, and then any advice after you've taken on that, and you know, keeping yourself sane and being organized and all that sort of thing.
I think how to find it, first of all, I mean, talk to your coworkers, ask them what their pain points are. If you have a list of bugs, go look at the things that have bugs in them. I think you can pretty easily find something to adopt, and maybe it'll start off small, maybe you can find something bigger. Once you adopt that as your own, I would say don't keep it as your own ever. You don't want knowledge to be siloed in one person. So bring somebody else in, collaborate with them, work with them, teach them the things that you just learned. That way there's always more than one person to go to. You never want to be the only person that knows how to do something or anything.
Yeah, I remember my other question. We spent some time talking about design patterns. Do design patterns matter to you, or what do you do?
They totally matter. And the Pooter book that I talked about mentions some good design patterns. I feel like it was cool to learn design patterns when I was in school, but I didn't have enough experience to really know what they were or why I would use them. And so I ended up going back and kind of rereading like the Gang of Five or Gang of Four book and kind of relearning those patterns at the time when I needed them. But they are very useful, some more so than others. I think there are some that are just, unless you're building a particular type of system, it's not applicable to you.
But you try and think in terms of design patterns when you're doing your project?
I think not explicitly. I feel like if you know them, you start to recognize patterns and you know when to apply them. You see something emerging a certain way and you're like, aha, that's going to be, I need to break this out into the, I can't even think of a name of a pattern right now, but
factory or something.
The factory pattern, yeah. Maybe not the factory. Sometimes people go too far with that.
All right, sorry. Picked a bad example. Well, how about, you've been, people, I don't know, complain or worried about that Ruby and Rails are just too inefficient for any real use. But it seems like you've been using it pretty consistently in your career. So do you have any comments about, I don't know, productivity, efficiency, the future of Rails or Ruby, stuff like that?
Sure. I think Rails is really good at getting you from zero to a working product very quickly because it has a lot of boilerplate stuff and it does a lot of the work for you in certain things, just kind of hooks these things up, whereas if you were to build it from scratch, it would take a little longer. You'd have to rewrite these pieces of architecture. And so that's really helpful. But that is what makes it slow because there's so much like stuff in between your code that you're writing and the server itself. So it is slower than some languages. I mean, if you're going to just write everything in C, it'll probably be pretty fast because you have, I mean, you have control over it, but maybe that's not the nicest way to write things for the web. And so there's some trade-offs. There's also, I mean, you can do some optimizations. I think Rails might be kind of slow, but it's getting better. There are a lot of people that are working to improve performance on that. I think when you get to a certain point, at least at GitHub, we're doing a lot of optimizations in Ruby. We have guys who are on the Ruby core team that are contributing back performance fixes to it all the time, and they're constantly bringing it into the GitHub code base. And so it's not a huge problem for us. Like we try to keep making it more and more performant. And I think that everybody talks about, oh, Rails doesn't scale. You know what doesn't scale? The database. It doesn't matter what else there
Armando
is.
would hug you if you...
Yeah, the database does not scale. It really doesn't matter what you have on top of it.
Right. So he talks about the importance of horizontal scalability in other parts of the system that don't scale. It's not the Rails as much.
Yeah.
Other questions? Here.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you spend some of your time outside of work connecting with other developers. Can you talk about what you do and whether you could have done any of that while you were an undergrad and what works and what doesn't?
Sure, absolutely. I have done, I started off going to meetups, like meetup.com. There's a Ruby meetup. There are meetups for Python. There are like book clubs for learning programming. There's things for like beginners. There's things for really advanced people. And so I found Meetup really useful like the first year or two after I got out of college. And then I started learning about like conferences, and I started going to conferences and talking to these people. You know,
What kind of conferences?
Ruby conferences, mostly Rails conferences. I got to meet like, I don't know, Aaron Patterson, one of the contributors to Rails, like huge contributor to Rails and prolific tweeter and pun person. And so he does lots of puns if you follow him on Twitter. And to meet these people and talk to them in person is really cool. And you make connections, and you suddenly become much more interested in like the open source projects that are kind of fueling what you're building. Because I find that a lot of what I've built, I'm using open source all the time. And I didn't know that much about open source in college, and I really wish that I could have gotten more involved in it and learned more about it and knew. I'm still bad at it. A lot of my coworkers are great open source contributors. They build their own libraries, they maintain things, or they contribute back to things like Rails core, Ruby core. And I haven't gotten to the point where I do that yet. I like fixed some bug on like a matcher thing for some library that Thoughtbot wrote, like a testing library, and that's about all I've done. But I try to contribute back to some educational things too. But I think that's really helpful. That's a good way to meet people and to learn about areas that you might not have learned about or you might not dive into in your job. If you go to conferences, you can meet people that might eventually connect you with a job, or you can just start discussing these random things on Twitter. You might complain about how this active record thing is slow, and this person that you met that's following you now will say, hey, have you tried this? And suddenly you'll have this new knowledge that you didn't have before.
You've done that as an undergraduate, you think? Some of those things as an undergraduate? Meetups, conferences?
I think meetups would have been interesting. Conferences maybe not as relevant when you're an undergrad, but I think if you go when you first get your job and when you get out, you'll meet a lot more people and get to see a lot more things than you could in your regular job, especially if you're just working on one project and one product. If you go to a conference, you can see all these other things that people are building and maybe get exposure to new ideas that you wouldn't have before.
Other questions?
So like, all right, so have you ever worked at like McDonald's or anything like that?
I was a cashier at the drive-thru at Arby's.
Okay, awesome. I worked at Arby's too. I've worked at Arby's. And the deal at Arby's is like, if you stop moving, they'll start thinking about firing you. Right?
Right.
And when I was working at NASA,
Wait to hear the question.
so when I was working at NASA, like literally my mentor would spend entire days and weeks just sitting with his feet up on his desk, like thinking about stuff, right? Mm-hmm. In the world of finance, it's like if you are not sprinting, then you're losing. Mm-hmm. And there's all this talk about people burning out in software as well. So I guess my question is, how do you gauge productivity for yourself, and how do people around you gauge your productivity, and how do you keep yourself from feeling like you're not moving fast enough? How do you determine that you're like doing okay?
That is an excellent question, and that's a constant struggle for a lot of people. I would say the best thing to do is to never compare yourself to anybody else. You're always going to be disappointed. There's always.
But okay, so you say you don't have bosses, right? You say you don't have bosses at Git, right?
Right.
But like, don't people?
We've been talking about implementing them, so no, not really. But people give feedback. We have a wonderful culture of feedback at GitHub where people will tell you if you're doing awesome. They'll also tell you that you're doing terrible in a very gentle way, and like, here's what you can do better, sort of thing. And so that's helpful for gauging yourself.
So can you just like, do you spend certain days like doing things that are like completely tangential? Do you find yourself going off into the weeds for days at a time, and that's cool? Sometimes,
and that's cool sometimes. If you find yourself in the weeds all the time, I think you have to have a little reality check and be like, maybe I should wander back.
Sure.
I think it's a process of kind of trying. You're gonna, first you're gonna maybe hit too high. That's probably where you're gonna go first. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna do too much, and then maybe you'll come back down here, and you'll kind of go back and forth until you figure out what the right medium is for yourself.
So you don't ever feel like there's like this pressure that's always looming that you should be working harder or doing more?
There is, and it's difficult. And I think that goes back to the comparison thing that I said. If you compare yourself with somebody else, especially like I work at GitHub with people who they do amazing stuff, and they've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years. Like they're fantastic. And if I compare myself to them, I will never think that I'm doing good enough. And yet, when I talk to other coworkers, they will say, you know, you're doing an amazing job. I've watched you do this and this and this, and it's so awesome. Like, keep doing that. And so you have to just cut that off and not think about what the other people are doing. Like, you want to give them feedback and tell them they're doing an awesome job, but you cannot gauge yourself by their productivity because you are two different people. You're at a different place. You're always going to be at a different place than somebody else. There will always be somebody above you. There will always be people below you, and so you just have to understand your place and where you are.
There is a role for managers, right? I mean, one of the roles for managers is to give you feedback like that, right? It's how are you doing? And you know, most companies use essentially salary, and salary increases as a way of getting feedback. You know, probably GitHub is one of the more unstructured companies, but I think Pivotal Labs, it was a little better organized, or I don't know, better organized, more hierarchically organized than that. Not a lot, but a little.
A little bit. When I first started, there were also no managers at Pivotal, and over my time of being there, they instituted first 1 layer of managers and then 2 layers, and I think they're far beyond that now. But it started off as kind of a chat with this other person that was kind of your manager. Like, they didn't have anybody that was a full-time manager. They were just a regular Pivotal employee that was pairing every day on a project, and then like 1 day out of the week they'd take like half hour out of their day and come talk to you and be like, hey, how's it going? Is everything okay? What can I help you with? I've gotten this feedback from some people that you're working with. Maybe you can improve it, or I've gotten this feedback, you're doing great, keep it up, you know, whatever. And they would do like yearly reviews in which, yeah, like you would get a raise if you're doing well. Or maybe not if you're not doing as well, sort of thing.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of more of like a business-related question, but how do you think GitHub has kind of like transformed the way we build applications to be more collaborative, and what kind of other industries do you think could be affected by this?
Ooh, good question. I think it's changed a lot of how we build things collaboratively, especially the impact that it's had on the open source world. GitHub hosts most of the open source projects out there, and they've given these people a place to build these projects that a lot of people use underneath their websites. And I can guarantee you that most of the software, I couldn't have written it myself. I would not have written anything nearly as good. It would have been probably okay, but like, if I'm collaborating with 100 other smart people around the world, like, we're going to build something way more awesome than just you and me building it together. And so I think that's a huge impact. But also being able to be distributed and remote, that's really helpful. That's definitely changed things.
Well, helpful in that you can get more talent, I presume. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not that you have to be sitting in the same room with another developer. You know, you can expand the boundaries of your company.
And I think the part of the question was, can you imagine it affecting, could other industries learn from it? Is that, or other companies?
What kind of other industries, like collaborative music or collaborative writing books?
Can you imagine other things besides software done this way?
Oh yeah, and we've actually talked about like building a GitHub for musicians, for writers. There are people right now that use GitHub to collaborate to write books, especially, I think.
Is that right? Well, I guess we do.
Yeah, you guys might. I know O'Reilly Media, they have repositories of their books that they will just collaborate on, have the authors there. One thing that we're really looking into is helping scientists share the code that they use to get all their data and to process their data, so that I think right now science is a very closed thing where you might just collaborate with one other person and you might share your results, but if you could share your data, maybe somebody else could use that and have like better results or do different sort of tests on it and come up with something even better. I think there's a lot of applications for this sort of thing.
You're hosting scientific data as well?
We are not hosting scientific data. We're starting to talk to scientists and see what they need, because I think it's a little different than what programmers need. Right now we've been hosting some some people will put their data sets on GitHub, or they'll put the code that they use to generate their data sets on GitHub, and that way somebody else somewhere else can generate that same data set and work with it.
Okay. Other questions?
What would you recommend, or where would you recommend looking for, get salary information when you're asking for a job? Like, you're never supposed to ask, right? But somehow you have to figure out
What's reasonable, what's appropriate. I think there's a website called Glassdoor. They'll show you, like for that particular company or for companies of that type or this particular job, this is about the salary range.
Do they show that regionally, or?
You can look per state or per city. You'll say like, Pivotal Labs in San Francisco, and it'll show you the San Francisco ones. You could just zoom out on the whole company, and it'll show you all over. I think that's a useful thing. I think there are other similar websites. That's a good place to start. And I would encourage you to just ask your friends if you know people who already work out there. I know that salary is like this taboo thing. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's
talk about it. More information is better.
It works to the employer's advantage if nobody talks about salary.
Exactly. Don't be embarrassed. Talk about it. And if you're not getting what you think you should, or you learn that you're not getting what you should, then go, raise hell or something. Tell somebody that they should be paying you more. Don't. I think when I first started, I kind of undervalued myself, and I was afraid to talk about it with people, and I kind of had this powwow with these other like female engineers this one time, and we talked about our salaries, and I was like, wow, we're all getting underpaid. This is terrible. And so the next job I was like, no, you need to give me this.
Yeah, it's very hard to see the downside of sharing salary information amongst your peers.
It's not a number that judges your worth. It's how much the company maybe thinks that they can get away with. Like, I mean, it's hard. You don't want to work for a company that's going to like seriously lowball you, because that's just insulting, and there's probably other things wrong with the company as well. But they're still going to try to do something to their benefit, and so I would say always try to negotiate a little bit. Like, ask for something that you think is ridiculous, and then let them negotiate you down instead of trying to go the other way.
Okay.
So on the topic of continuous integration and deploying, 100 times a day, I've kind of got two questions. One, like being a programmer, one of my professors told me, always be terrified. How do y'all do y'all break things on a daily basis, or do y'all somehow, to me at least, magically deploy 100 times a day without ever breaking the system?
So we have some tricks that help us not break the system too much. Hopefully you don't notice when we break it. The one thing is good test coverage. Like the CI, it really helps. If your tests are red, something's wrong if you wrote good tests. And I think that's the first step. That's the first thing that will show you. Like our deployment strategy, it will not deploy anything if there's a red build. It will only deploy once you've gone green, so you can't push anything out there that could possibly be broken. But the next thing beyond that, at GitHub at least, we actually do a lot of development with these things we call feature flags. And we'll start, if we're pushing something new out there, we'll have in the code somewhere, only show this if they're a staff user. And so the first thing we'll do, we'll push it out, it's on production, but you're not gonna see it. I am, and anybody else who works at GitHub is gonna see it. And so we can kind of play around with it a little bit, and it might be totally broken, and we're like, sorry guys, this is a little wonky, like, there's ways you can, as a staff member, turn off if somebody's pushing something funny out, you can just say, turn all that off, I just wanna look at GitHub like someone from the outside would be looking at it. Then beyond that, we try to, there are times where we'll also use the same sort of feature flags to like slowly ramp up how many people we're showing it to and kind of gauge the reaction. So say, show it to like 10% of the people and kind of make sure that everything's okay, and then slowly build that up until everybody has it.
All right.
You get another hug from Armando on that. He gave a lecture on feature flags for both those purposes.
Awesome.
So I think you sort of explained my follow-up question, but I'll state it explicitly. From my point of view, I don't really ever see GitHub like, boom, new feature, like this is completely new. I mean, I've seen, I've seen like GISTs or GISTs come online in in the, at least I've noticed them. But like, do y'all deploy things to production and then turn on a big feature flag, or do things just get built out gradually? How does that work?
I think they get built out kind of gradually. Well, there are some big features, like I think 2 or 3 months ago, they did a complete redesign of the repository view. So it used to be like this big chunky thing on top and on the side, and they kind of made it a little more minimal. I think it sped up page load time, which is important to us, and maybe you don't notice if your connection's fast enough, but for people in Africa that have like no connection at all, like they were really happy when we did that. Besides that, I think actually a lot of features that we've been doing is trying to just improve the performance of GitHub, the performance of Git when you're doing those operations, and we're seeing a lot of increased traffic, and so we're working on scaling those things and making sure it's not down. We have a status.github.com that shows when we're up or down. You can see like there are times where we're going down, we're having problems with these things, and so we've been working really hard on those, and those may not seem like exciting, shiny features, but I promise you that you'd be pretty unhappy if we weren't working on that. You'd be like, why, freaking GitHub, why is it down all the time?
Thanks.
All right, I'll stop here on the way.
So I understand you use Git as a version control system. Are you also storing your code on GitHub? And if so, do you worry about the risk that if you write code that breaks something, that you might also be sort of in danger of ruining the code that is stored on the system that you just broke?
Right. Yeah, a little bit. We do store our code on GitHub. We use GitHub to build GitHub. GitHub has a repository that's called GitHub on GitHub. Maybe I can say GitHub like 3 more times. So yes, but our systems are decoupled in certain ways that stop it from totally breaking. Like the way we deploy is not through the website. There's not a button on the website. We have a separate system. We actually do it through chat. I don't know if you guys know anything about Hubot. We built this little robot that sits in our chat rooms, and he's what we use to deploy things. All of our ops people, they do what we call chat ops. They write these commands, and they have the robot like do them for them. And so that kind of pushes them aside, decouples those. So if you break something on GitHub, you can just go through a deployment system, and you can revert. You can push master back to like 1 commit before whatever you just broke, and that'll fix everything. So we generally haven't run into that, but decoupling your systems really helps prevent anything like that.
There was another question over here.
I'm kind of curious about how does GitHub make money? Like, because from what I know, most of the people just use it for free, right?
There's a lot of people that use it. They'll pay us. There are paid accounts. If you want to have private repositories, you have to pay us money, like everything is public otherwise. And so people that work in open source, they may not pay because everything they work on is public, but a lot of people want private things, especially companies, and that's where we make our money. Like the company, like obviously the repository that we use to build GitHub is private, and so if we were paying ourselves in some sort of weird scheme, like we would be paying for GitHub. Every other company that does it, unless they want their code to be totally public, they're gonna pay us. We also have some companies, they want to use GitHub, they really like the flow, but they have these security restrictions. They have certain things that say, we can't have our code hosted outside of our walls. And so we actually have like enterprise on-site installs of like your own version of github.com, but inside your firewall and inside, you control the servers. And a lot of companies, pay us to do that. And we kind of have, it's like the same product, but a slightly different product. And that's basically where we make our money.
Okay, well, I think why don't we do wrap up? Does you have any parting words of advice to these future people following your footsteps? I
don't know. Go out and find whatever you're passionate about. I think that's the most important thing. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing, go find something else. Like, don't be afraid to try different things and see what works for you. I think that's definitely the most important thing.
All right. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.